Why does pain keep returning, even when nothing new is happening? The moment is over. The conversation has ended. Nothing more is being said, and yet something continues. A thought comes back. A feeling returns. And before you even notice, you are no longer here. You are inside something that has already ended. You try to move on, but something keeps bringing it back. The same memory, the same question. Why did that happen? What did it mean? And each time it returns, it feels just as real as the first moment, even though nothing new is actually happening. So, what is it that keeps returning? What is it that doesn't end when the moment ends? And more quietly, what is it that you are following without even noticing? Maybe, before trying to stop anything, there is something to be seen. If you pause and really look, where is the mind? Not the thoughts, not the feelings, but the mind itself. You search inside in your head behind your eyes, but what you find never stays. A thought appears, then disappears. A feeling rises, then fades. It is like trying to hold smoke in your hand. Before you can grasp it, it is already gone. The mind is not a thing. It is more like a river, always moving, always flowing. You cannot point to one place and say this is it. Because the moment you try to hold it, it has already changed, but something else happens. You do not just watch the river, you begin to follow it. And slowly, without noticing, you are no longer standing still. You are being carried by the current. A single thought appears, small, almost nothing, but the mind does not leave it alone. It connects it to something from before. A memory, a feeling, a meaning, and very quickly, it is no longer just this moment. It becomes something that has direction, something that pulls, something that continues. Each time you follow that movement, a path is formed, like walking on the same trail again and again. At first it is barely visible, but over time it becomes clear, easy to follow. So the next time a thought appears, the mind does not start fresh. It returns to the same direction, the same questions, the same feelings, the same story. This is why it feels like the past is still there. Not because it is stored somewhere inside you, but because it is being recreated again and again, like an echo in a valley. The sound is gone, but it returns because something keeps sending it back. The function of the mind is simple. It creates, it connects, it repeats. That is what it does. But when what it creates is believed, it becomes something else. Something heavy, something personal, something that stays. And slowly, something becomes clear. The mind is not holding your pain. It is replaying it again and again, through connection, through habit, through continuation. And maybe the problem is not the thought, but the moment it is followed. And this is where something very important happens. A thought appears, softly, almost unnoticed. I am not enough. I did something wrong. At first, it is just a thought, like a sound passing through a room. But before it is seen, before there is any space, it becomes something else. It's like a drop of ink falling into clear water. At first, it is just a small point. But the moment it spreads, it colors everything. The thought is no longer just a thought. It becomes the way you see yourself, the way you feel, the way you move through the moment. A mother hears her child say something harsh, a simple sentence, spoken in frustration. At first, it is just sound, just words, but almost instantly, something happens. Maybe I failed. Maybe I'm not a good mother. Why does my child speak to me this way? And without noticing, the moment is no longer just what was said. It becomes something about her. She doesn't just hear the words. She wears them, like putting on a coat without realizing. And suddenly, everything feels heavier. The pain is no longer in the moment. It is in the meaning that stayed. And once it is believed, it doesn't stop there. She replays the moment. Later that night. The next day. Like an echo that doesn't fade. Not because the words are still being spoken, but because something inside keeps returning. And this is the part most people never see. The suffering is not in what was said. It is in the moment it became something real, something personal, something that stayed. But sometimes, something different happens. The same words are heard, but this time they are seen, not as truth, not as identity, just as something that appeared and can pass, like watching a cloud, instead of becoming the sky. And in that small space, something changes. And once this is seen, something very quiet becomes possible. Not a sudden change, not a perfect silence. The thoughts are still there, the feelings are still there, but something is not the same. A thought appears, and for a brief moment it is not followed. Not because you stop it, not because you control it, just because it is seen. The same situation happens. The same words are heard. A mother hears her child speak with frustration. The tone is sharp. The words are familiar. The feeling rises just as before. But this time, something is different. There is a small space. The words are heard. The feeling is felt. But it does not immediately become a story. The thought appears. I did something wrong, but now it is seen as it appears. Not pushed away, not argued with, just seen. And in that seeing, something softens. I am a bad mother becomes, there is a thought saying this. Nothing disappears, but something is no longer completely inside it. And slowly, something else becomes possible. She does not need to do more, not control the thoughts, not push them away, because for many years that is what she has been doing, trying and still being pulled. So this time, something softer. When the thought begins, instead of going into it, she gently notices her body, the breath moving in and out. The weight of her hands resting, the simple feeling of sitting here. Nothing special, just this. The thought is still there. It may say, you did something wrong, you should have done better. But this time, she does not answer it. She does not argue. She does not follow. She lets it be, like a voice in another room, like hearing a radio, playing somewhere. The sound is there, but she does not have to go and turn it off, and she does not have to sit there and listen. It is just a sound. And slowly, something changes. The thought still comes, but it does not take her as far. It does not become a long story. It does not stay as long. She is not stopping the thoughts. She is just not walking with all of them, and for the first time after many years, something inside feels a little more quiet. Not because everything is gone, but because not everything is being followed. And for so many nights, this is how it has been. The house is quiet, the body is tired, but the mind keeps moving. What did I do wrong? Why did things turn out this way? Maybe I wasn't enough. One thought leads to another, and then another. She lies there, replaying everything. Not because she wants to suffer, but because the mind doesn't know how to stop. And before she even realizes, hours have passed. The night becomes longer, not because of what happened, but because something keeps returning to it. But now, something is different. The same thoughts return, the same voice appears, but this time, she doesn't go further. She hears it, like a sound passing through the room. She doesn't answer it. She doesn't argue. She doesn't follow, and for the first time, the thought doesn't become a whole story. It is still there, but something is no longer moving with it. The moment is not being extended anymore. It begins, and it is allowed to end. It's like a fan after being unplugged. The blades are still spinning. The sound is still there. At first, it feels the same, but something important is no longer happening. There is no more energy feeding it. She doesn't try to stop the movement. She doesn't force the mind to be quiet. She just doesn't turn it back on. And slowly, something begins to change. The movement continues, but it is already fading. Not because she did something, but because something is no longer continuing it. The thoughts still come, but they don't stay as long. They don't pull her as far. Sometimes they end before becoming a story, like an echo, that no one is sending back. And in that, the night feels different, not silent, not empty, but lighter, because not every thought is being carried forward anymore. The moment ends, because she doesn't continue it. The mind still moves, but it no longer takes her with it. And as the thoughts begin to settle, something else becomes clearer. The same feeling that used to stay for hours is still here. The tightness in the chest, the heaviness in the heart, the quiet sadness that comes without warning. Awareness does not remove this. It does not make her empty. If anything, she begins to feel more. But this time, the feeling is not being held in the same way. It rises, and it is allowed to move. Nothing is pushed away. Nothing is forced to disappear. The memory returns. The moment her child spoke harshly. The tone, the words, the moment she didn't know how to respond, and stayed silent. The feeling comes back into the body. But now, something is different. She doesn't turn it into a story about herself. Not, I failed. Not, I am not enough. Just a feeling moving through. And even when it returns, it is not a failure. It is simply something that has come back to be felt again. Before, she would meet this feeling with resistance, trying to understand it, trying to fix it, trying to make it go away, and when it stayed, she believed something was wrong. But now, there is a different response, a quieter one. She allows it, like a wave rising and falling, without trying to hold the water in place. And slowly, something softens. The body breathes again. The feeling moves and begins to pass. The next time her child speaks with frustration, the words are still sharp. Nothing outside has changed, but she doesn't receive them the same way. Not through the old wound, not through the old story. She hears the tone, but she also senses something beneath it. Maybe pain, maybe confusion, maybe something her child doesn't know how to express. And in that, her response begins to change. She doesn't react from hurt. She stays. She listens. Not perfectly, not every time, but sometimes there is space. And in that space, something new appears. Not defense, not withdrawal, but understanding, a quiet compassion. She still feels deeply, but the feeling does not become a wall anymore. It becomes something that can be held gently and allowed to pass. And maybe this is what changes. Not that emotions disappear, but that they are no longer carried alone. There is space now. Space to feel without collapsing. Space to hear without defending. Space to stay without needing to fix. And in that space, she is no longer protecting herself from everything that appears. And slowly, very quietly, life begins to feel a little more at ease. Life continues. The same house, the same kitchen, the same quiet routines of each day. She wakes up, she moves slowly, she prepares a simple meal. Nothing outside has really changed, but something inside is no longer the same. Before, every moment was carried into the next. A word would stay, a feeling would follow. Now, there are moments that simply happen. She hears her child's voice from another room. There is a tone, a little impatience. She feels it. And then, it ends. Before, that moment would stay with her. It would follow her into the next thought and the next. But now, it ends where it ends. She continues with what is here. She cuts vegetables. She pours tea. She sits quietly by the window, and for a moment, nothing is missing. Not because everything is perfect, but because nothing is being carried from before. She is simply here, not replaying, not preparing, just this moment as it is. She still acts, she still speaks, she still responds when something needs to be done. But something is different. She is no longer being pushed by the mind in the same way. She doesn't react because a thought demands it. She responds because the moment is here. What needs to be done is done. Simply, without resistance. Life moves, and she moves with it, and in that, there is a quiet ease. And this is the freedom that begins to appear. Not something dramatic, not a life where everything becomes perfect. She still feels, she still remembers. There are still difficult moments, but something is no longer the same. Nothing is being held the way it was before. A thought comes and it goes. A feeling rises and it moves. A moment happens and it ends. It is not carried into the next one. Before, everything stayed. One word became a story. One moment became something heavy. Even the things that used to stay for days now pass. Not because they are smaller, but because they are not being held for so long. Something inside has softened. She is no longer tight against life. She's not bracing for what might come. There is space now, and in that space, things move more freely. And in that space, there is a kind of freedom that is very quiet. So quiet it almost feels like nothing at all. No excitement, no big change, just a simple lightness, a softness. She is no longer protecting herself from everything that appears. Life is still here, but it is not something she has to defend against. Nothing is held, and somehow that is enough. And maybe this is where everything becomes very simple again. Nothing new needs to be added. Nothing needs to be removed. The mind still moves. Life still happens. Thoughts still come. Feelings still rise. But now, there is less need to understand everything, less need to hold on to anything. What is here is enough, and what passes is allowed to pass. There is nothing to fix this moment, nothing missing, nothing extra. Just this, as it is. So if the mind cannot be found, there is nothing you need to search for. You don't have to look for it. You don't have to figure it out. Just watch. Watch how a thought appears, how a feeling moves through the body, how a moment comes and quietly ends. Nothing needs to be stopped. Nothing needs to be changed. Everything is already moving on its own. You are simply here to see it. Right here, there is a space before the next thought, before the next reaction, before something becomes a story. It is very subtle, very easy to miss, but it is always here, and when you notice it, even for a moment, something softens. The body relaxes. The breath deepens. Not because you tried, but because nothing was continued. So for now, there is nothing you need to do. A thought may appear. A feeling may move. Let them come. Let them be. And gently notice how they end on their own. You don't have to carry them forward. You don't have to add anything to them. Just don't continue. And see what remains.
Why does the pain return when the storm has long since passed? The words are gone, the room is still, yet the shadows seem to last. A thought arrives like a silent guest. A feeling starts to bloom, and suddenly you're no longer here inside this quiet room. You are walking through a door that closed 1,000 miles ago, trying to catch a wisp of smoke that has nowhere left to go. If you pause and look inside, where does the mind reside? Not the thoughts or the feelings, but the ocean's rising tide. You search behind the eyes, but it slips through open hands, like trying to build a castle out of shifting desert sands. A single drop of ink falls into the water clear, and suddenly the world is stained by a phantom form of fear. Boundless oceans, vast skies, why do we choose the cage? The past is not a prison cell, it's just a ghost upon the page. Like an echo in the valley, the original sound words are heard again, cutting through the air. The old wound starts to throb. Am I failing? Do I care? But this time there's a gap, a breath, a tiny space to see the thought arise without wearing it on your face. I am a failure becomes there is a thought that says I failed. The storm's still outside, but the ship has lowered its sails. Like a radio in another room playing a distant song. You hear the sound, you feel the beat, but you don't sing along. Boundless oceans, vast skies, watch the blades begin to slow. The power has been unplugged. Let the inner energy go. You don't have to fight the wind or force the mind to stay. Just stop walking with the ghost to lead you far away. Cut the vegetables, pour the tea, sit by the window light. Nothing is missing, nothing is wrong. In the stillness of the night, it's not that the pain disappears or the heart becomes a stone. It's that the heavy burden is no longer carried alone. You feel the tightness in the chest, the sadness in the bone, but you let it rise and let it fall. A wave that is unknown. Space to hear without defense, space to feel the sting without turning the winter's cold into a permanent thing. Life continues as it was, the kitchen and the rain, but something's lost its gravity, the heaviness of pain. The thought comes and it goes, the moment starts and it ends. Nothing to fix, nothing to change, just this, as it is. Don't continue,